This video is to show off how I actually built this bartop arcade machine. I started off with these side panels. I printed a template using 9 sheets of printer paper in the shape of the dragon. This is 1/2" MDF board, and the first thing I did was cut it into a more manageable size. Then taped my template, my paper template, to the panel, and using a combination of a bandsaw, a jigsaw, and a router table, I was able to just shape these sides, cut out any unnecessary pieces, and get the shape of my dragon. For the other side, the process was the same, except all I had to do was stick double-sided tape across this panel and stick it to the other side panel. From there, I took it to the router table, and using a flush trim router bit, all I did was set the ball bearing to match that panel, and then I started cutting out this green side just with the router table alone. So the difficult part was doing the first panel. The second one came easy just because you use the router table and follow the template. The Marquee for the bar top uses epoxy resin, and the reason why I use resin instead of plexiglass is because I got tired of managing plexiglass. First of all, it's annoying to cut and it can break easily, and I thought giving it a fill of epoxy resin gave it a nice touch, some depth, something that hasn't been really seen before. So what I did was the same process as the side panels. I drilled some holes here and stuck a jigsaw blade inside to do a rough cut of the inside so that my router would not have to overwork and cut everything. Once I did that, I turned it around, or flipped it on its underside, and I taped these sides with a piece of 3/4 plywood. And using the same technique that I did with the side panel, I just taped the pieces, and went around with the router bit, which gave me these perfect round corners and perfect edges, and just the perfect cutout for the Marquee. Then I filled it with the epoxy resin, and using a heat gun, I was able to get rid of some of the air bubbles. However, it's my first time pouring epoxy, and I did get rid of the heat bubbles, the air bubbles I mean, the first time, but a short while later I left it unattended and noticed that when I came back there were some more bubbles. So you literally have to stay there 15 minutes to keep an eye on it, to keep airing out those bubbles. Here is the inside of the behind the Marquee. I have the LED rope, which some of the LEDs don't work, and I have the speakers. They're very small speakers, 2x2, and the cabinet catches, and I'll try to block this light from the camera. And here I have the speaker grills for the speakers. The control panel is plexiglass up here on this top piece with the artwork pasted on top. Over here there is no plexiglass, and we have 2 foam pads. The reasoning behind the 2 foam pads is that so if you're playing for a long time, you can rest your hands on these and you can play for long periods of time. These are Sanwa buttons. The joystick is the Sanwa joystick, and Sanwa 30mm buttons. Actually, it's a combination of Sanwa and Seimitsu buttons, and these are actually called crown buttons, and I chose those just because of the color. I ordered my parts from focusattack.com, and that's also included in the set of plans. I opened the control panel. Really, the only thing holding the control panel down is this L bracket. So the control panel will rest on this hole, and with the use of a screw and the wing nut, it'll just screw there, and that's what locks it in place. I didn't have enough room to install a little cabinet latch like I did with the Pac-Man machine, but same on this side. That's where the screw goes in, and it tightens from the other side with a wing nut. And here we have the PCB for the first player side. It's just a USB encoder, and you can see here that I taped out the bag because I soldered the joystick buttons over here, and I didn't want it touching anything else, and these just connect to the PCB. So for $11–12, very nice PCB for joystick wiring for the Raspberry Pi. Here I have some wire terminals. Just stuck some wires from the Raspberry Pi and brought them over here to the joysticks. Just makes it a little more organized, so where you don't have wires crossing everywhere. And here's a PS360 Plus arcade PCB. This is actually multi-console, and I had an extra one, so I used this for the second player pad. In reality, it's kind of overkill for this setup. You could have just used, you could use a joystick gamepad and hack it or something. But this is what I use, and the installation is easy. Just have a common ground, one wire being ground connected to the same side on all buttons, and the other terminal for the signal wire, and that's it. You can see here I have the screws right there and over here, and they just slide right in and are tightened by a wing nut. Moving to the back, I installed this handle kind of late, but the handle is useful because just open the door and there you go. So I have two speaker grills. In reality, they're just there to cover the fan holes. I used a power button switch, wired it up, and this is great because it makes it wireless. You can just pull this out and move it around easier that way. Again, this is actually plywood and plywood for the door. And I have the keyhole here with the keys, but I had a side piece going across from the machine, and it didn't exactly work out because it broke. And so I'm not using this arcade bartop machine for renting or anything like that. So just having the handle opening the door and attaching to these cabinet catches is fine for me. Here we have a 6-slot power strip, and I had this little adapter just in case I wanted to connect an external fan. But these two little fans right here seem to be providing enough ventilation for the whole machine, even though they're so tiny. One of them is reversed. One's blowing air inside and the other outside. I have the arcade amplifier right here, $10. It's pretty cheap. If I have the volume all the way up, you can hear some static. It's not the best choice, but it works. Here I have the Raspberry Pi. Here's the power and all of its USB ports and its connections, micro SD card. Here's the wiring for the power switch. I just cut the end of the power strip and wired up this according to the diagram which is included in a set of plans. This is something apart which I won't go over just yet, but basically it's a music PCB. So if I were to push a certain button on the control panel, it would play a song. But then I realized Emulation Station already has an MP3 player, so this was kind of totally useless. And here we have the 26-inch monitor. The Raspberry Pi has an HDMI to VGA cable, so that means there's no audio. That is the reason why I use this audio amplifier. The setup for this is the Raspberry Pi Model 3. It is overclocked, and even with the Raspberry Pi being overclocked, it doesn't overheat. It's overclocked to 1.4 gigahertz. Setting up RetroPie it takes a while to set up, and it takes a while to get used to it and how to set it up. You also need a keyboard, so I purchased this chat pad, and this works just fine for emulators like MAME or anything that requires a keyboard. You have this as a backup, because sometimes you may be setting up the keypad or the joystick inputs and you accidentally press a button and you can't go back. Same with the emulators. You map certain buttons, but if you make a mistake and you press, D for the A button, you can't select things anymore. So you need a keyboard. You absolutely have to have a keyboard when you set up the RetroPie. But once you get it set up, it should look like this, and you can navigate through the emulators that you have. It did take quite a while to set this up, and I'm still not done setting up the RetroPie. There's still a lot that I could set up. Some of the games work, some don't, even though the Raspberry Pi is overclocked. Games like Star Fox and Super Mario RPG don't really run well on my setup. However, I hear some other people setup, it works just fine. And I don't know if that has to do with the model of the Raspberry Pi or whatever, but I don't know. So let's test out a game. This is to enter. This is like either A or B. And it will load. It'll say launching. You can configure if you press the A button, then it will configure the joystick input, and then you're ready to play. So this is Galaga 88, one of my favorite games. And it works just fine. To reset, I press both start and select. So I have start, select, or coin, and then my main 6 action buttons. I didn't map this exit button, but you could if you want to, and I didn't map it just because it was getting in the way of resetting it with these two, and not all emulators quit with this button. The artwork, I designed it in Adobe Illustrator, and I just printed it on some adhesive vinyl, and I was able to stick it on top. That's all I did for the artwork. Just move some pictures around, combine them with the pictures of the Marquee, and corrected the dimensions, and there you go. And that is why you see this white outer ring, because I put 33 millimeters instead of 30 millimeters for the sound buttons. So it's a little error on my part. This is actually tempered glass. So it's just a piece of tempered glass. The dimensions, which are 28 by 16 inches, I believe. And I went with tempered so nobody would hit it and it would break. Again, the artwork is actually pasted onto the monitor frame, And so there's no need to paint the Marquee black because that's a little annoying. And if you don't use the right kind of tape, it'll slip through. It's just a pain in the butt. So I pasted the artwork on top of the actual Marquee frame on the wood, and I think it gives it a little more character than just having a black bezel going around your monitor. And so the Marquee just latches on with those cabinet catches. I did have to screw in into the epoxy, but I plan to redo this Marquee because there's too many mistakes with it. But that's the Marquee. It gives it a little something you haven't seen. Same with the foam pads. I've never seen an arcade machine with some foam pads. And the shape of the bar top machine itself is a bubble. So I hope this video helps you. It was informative. I hope I didn't leave anything out, but if I did, feel free to email me at arcadebartops@gmail.com or follow me on social media at arcadebartops Instagram, at arcadebartops on Twitter, and my Facebook page is arcadebartops1. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later. My next bar top machine build is going to be even more crazy than this. But I like to build things that no one will ever really see. And so that's what I'm trying to pass on to you guys. Is the idea is that you guys can create something spectacular. So far, all the reactions that I've gotten on this machine have been awesome. People like it. They just go crazy when they see it, especially the old school Bobble fans. And you can rent this machine out. You can build many and rent it out for some extra money on the weekends or something. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys. Thanks again for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.